Good evening. I'm President Lynette Zalesny, and a very warm welcome to all of you this evening. It's always wonderful to have a full house, and I know why, because we have such an incredible speaker this evening. So we're so fortunate to have all of you here for this special event. Students, I do know that some of you have other classes that you're going to, so please feel comfortable in this space, but if you do see seats that are open, please do find a place to make yourself feel welcome. I want to thank, first of all, our leadership here at California State University, Bakersfield, particularly in our Ethics Center and across the university, Dr. Jackie Kegley for her leadership in so many areas on campus. Dr. Kegley, thank you. And I'm so very pleased to work alongside such an incredible leader of the Kegley Institute of Ethics, and that is Dr. Michael Burrows. And thank you to his team as well. Michael, thank you. And of course, we have a very special speaker here this evening that is a friend, a colleague, and also one that we call our own, an adjunct professor here at CSUB, Lyle Martin. Please give him a round of applause. When I think of ethical leadership, I think of a number of characteristics. In particular, I think of respect, listening, fairness, building trust through transparency, modeling integrity, and courage. An ethical leader also serves beyond self and leads for the greater good. And that sure sounds like our speaker tonight, doesn't it? We are so fortunate to have Lyle Martin tonight with us. And again, we're so fortunate to have him here as one of our own at CSUB. He has earned the respect of the entire community through his ethical behavior and passion for servant leadership. And I know we're all looking forward to his wisdom, his comments tonight, and his courage. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here. It's great to have so many interested in ethics and leadership. And I would like to introduce to the stage our own Dr. Michael Burrows. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zalesny, and welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. It's wonderful to see you all here. And on behalf of the Institute, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us for Ethics and Leadership, a conversation with Chief Lyle Martin. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors who make this and all of our events for our campus community possible. And our major supporting sponsors are the Kegley family, Kern Schools Federal Credit Union, Kaiser Permanente, and Adventist South Bakersfield. So rounds of applause for them for helping us do these events. And just a few words on the origin of this event. This is the second edition of the Ethics and Leadership series, the first with Dr. Zalesny last semester. We organized this conversation with the aim of considering, as a community, both the challenges and the importance of ethical leadership. And what better way to do that than learning directly from leaders on our campus, in our community, people who face ethical challenges, lead with an ethical vision, and lead organizations that make a difference in our community. And we're very grateful that a longtime leader in our community, Chief Lyle Martin, has agreed to be with us tonight to talk about his insight and his experience in a leadership role. Just a bit more about Chief Martin's background. Chief was born and raised in Bakersfield and is a CSUB alumni. He worked for the Bakersfield Police Department for 31 years, starting as a street-level narcotics officer and working all the way through the ranks through numerous levels of service to be selected as Chief of Police in 2016. And since he's retired from that position, he now serves as Chief Investigator for the Kern County District Attorney's Office. Chief Martin is a recognized subject matter expert in law enforcement executive management development and is a graduate of the first cohort of the California Police Chiefs Executive Leadership Institute. He is also, as Dr. Zalesny mentioned, an adjunct faculty member here at CSUB, and it's wonderful to see so many students with us tonight. Maybe some of you have had the chance to take a class with Chief Martin. And he's also involved with a wide range of local organizations, including Bakersfield Downtown Rotary, International Association of Chiefs of Police, and a board member for the Kegley Institute of Ethics, and also the CSUB Center for Social Justice, so active in numerous organizations. For those of you interested in learning more about Chief Martin's background beyond tonight, right, because in many ways this might be an appetizer for you, I encourage you to listen to a new KIE podcast that we've just started producing and publishing called The Ethicist Corner. And that's available for free on Spotify. And our first episode actually featured Chief Martin as kind of a lead up to this event. So give it a listen and let us know what you think. Just a bit on the process tonight. So Chief Martin and I will sit down in a moment, and I just have a few questions that I'll ask him to kind of think about ethics and leadership and some of his insight for us tonight. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions from all of you. And I encourage you to be thinking about questions you might want to ask and share your thoughts with us tonight. And we'll have an interesting community conversation about ethical leadership together. So thanks so much again. I appreciate it.
Is this thing on? There we go. Madam President, don't leave yet.
I'm bringing people up.
Okay, well, quickly. My mom says if somebody invites you to their house, you better bring them a gift.
And I love that you brought me sweets.
You're welcome.
So Chief, thanks again for being with us. So the topic of our conversation tonight broadly is ethical leadership. To start, I'm wondering if you can talk about who in your life, both personally or from afar, has been particularly influential for you as an exemplar of ethical leadership. And in what ways did they influence you in your career path?
Okay, well, first of all, my parents, my mother and my father, I would say. Numerous teachers and educators who, far too many to list. I would have to say Pastor Tyree Tolliver and Pastor Oscar Anthony. Dr. Larry Ryder. And then my readings from Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about each one of those. My parents immigrated out here from Texas and Oklahoma, and when they got here, they met. My dad's a Korean War vet, but I think it's interesting from an ethical and social aspect is my mom, when she moved out here, she's black from Oklahoma, and this was the time when the Okies weren't really wanted in California. I think some of us are so young that we look at California as being this melting pot and we're the leaders, but in fact, Californians didn't want people from Texas and Oklahoma here. So she had to endure some of those things, and she shared those stories with me and with my sister, my brother, and I. And when we talked about how you treat people, that was always one of her principles. And she always spoke her mind, which sometimes as a little kid could be embarrassing, okay? Because Mrs. Martin does not hold her tongue. And, and my father, like I said, Korean War vet, worked hard. He was always very respectful to everyone that we met. As I kind of grew through my life, I think Pastor Tolliver and Pastor Anthony had a huge impact on my spiritual being as a young man, and even today. Pastor Anthony and I, we speak at least once a month to kind of keep my moral compass where it needs to be. And sometimes, regardless of where you are, somebody once told me, the higher you go in an organization, the fewer people you can have lunch with. Because there are things that you can only share with certain people, and I appreciate Pastor Anthony being that confidant. I think of Dr. Larry Ryder. He pushed me in an educational aspect. For those of you that don't know Dr. Ryder, he was the superintendent of schools for Kern County. We sit on a couple different boards together, and I'm able to have some of these high-level intellectual conversations with him and discuss things from a different perspective. And then Dr. King, more from a leadership perspective. It is, I always find it amazing that at the age of 26, Dr. King led the bus boycott. And I think, I'm twice his age, and I don't know that I could pull that off today. Mm-hmm. He pulls this bus boycott, 15 days, costing the company about $45,000. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but in today's money, that's over $400,000. So if you have a business or something that is not treating people the way that it should, and you're able to rally that type of following to do the right thing, that's incredible to me. And there's no social media, okay? There's no cell phones. And this is 1955. In 1960, only 70% of American households had a home phone, and you had to pay to use it. So that is incredible to me to have that type of influence where people talk about that. And then finally with Dr. King, I always bring this up. How many of you have heard, I have a dream speech, or you've heard someone talk about that? Raise your hand. You're going to participate in this, by the way. I'm a college professor, so, right? We all know that. We've heard that. How many of you know that there were 9 other speakers that day? Anybody know their names? That's impactful. And so those are some of the influences in my life to where I am today.
So it's helpful to hear. And I think about, your role in our community has been an influential one in several ways. And specifically, right, as serving as chief of police. And I was actually having a conversation with my students today in teaching media ethics this semester. And we were talking about the relationship between being ethics and being a professional. And whether those are, ethics is kind of a cherry on top, good thing to have, or it's actually an essential part of being a professional. And so I'm wondering, can you talk about the ways, in your experience, ethics has been important for you to be an effective leader in your organization? What ways has it influenced your leadership approach?
The number one thing, there's been several surveys and research done when people talk to employees or people who work in companies and they ask them, what's the number one thing that you want from your leaders? And the number one thing is honesty. You have to have trust. Trust is critical. So if your credibility cannot be in question, regardless of what you're doing, and regardless of where you're going. So as police chief at the police department, I built this momentum around creating a culture of accountability. And we started to talk about that. And from a leadership perspective, you have to be careful. I'm following 19 other police chiefs. You have people who've been in the organization 20, 25, 30 years. And the question is, what are you saying? What are you saying about the organization? So when I presented to the organization, we're talking about this culture of accountability, I had to be very strategic on letting them know that it wasn't that we were doing anything wrong. It wasn't that I felt that the organization was not accountable or ethical. But I used the example, I went to every briefing, talked to every employee, and we talked about these things. And, I'm a very show and tell type of guy, so I'd ask them, how many of you go to the gym every day? And people would raise their hands. I said, how many of you read? Of course, everyone in the organization raised their hand. I said, well, I don't get it. Most of you seem to be in very good shape, and all of you are very intelligent. So why are you reading and working out? And they say, oh, well, I'm working out to get better, okay? I'm reading to improve myself. I said, exactly. This is the same method that I used with my oldest son when I was coaching him, and I would ride him, as we say, like a fresh horse. And he would say, Dad, why are you always riding me? You know, I'm the best player on the team. I'm this, I'm that. As a coach. And I would tell him this, son, you don't have to be sick to get better. That's why you read. You're reading to get better. You don't have to be sick to get better. The organization wasn't sick. You don't have to be sick to get better. You just continue to improve yourself. My only expectation is that we're a little bit better today than we were yesterday. And that's from every perspective. And then we push those expectations all the way down to the ground level. I'll give you an example of that. Everyone in the organization was charged with, if you see someone who is behaving in a manner that's incongruent with my message or the guiding principles of the organization, it is your responsibility to check that person. And it doesn't matter if it's me or if it's the custodian. Everybody has, that is the expectation. So I've kind of got a little story because I have a open door policy. So we're going around and I'm talking about where we're going in the future and how we're going to do this and how we're going to respect each other in the building, and everybody has value. So we're talking about what a vision that I had. So I go to the very first briefing. There's 9 briefings, I think. I go to the very first briefing. Chief Terry will probably remember this. And in the briefing, I talked about, I got everybody excited. You're all, part of the team. I want you. You have value. We're going to do these things, right? And patrol's going to respond initially, and they're going to take care of everything. And then we're going to have the crime lab show up, and they're going to do these things. And investigations is going to come out, and they're going to do this. We're going to do the follow-up. We're going to make the community feel safe when one of these major incidents happen. And they said, and then the community relations unit's going to come in, they're going to make balloon animals. And everybody laughed, right? So I finished that first briefing. I go to my office, and Vicki says, hey, you've got a couple visitors. Well, it was 2 people from the community relations unit. And he said, Chief, we don't make balloon animals. I said, okay. She said, that was very offensive. I said, okay. She goes, in fact, we go back because we're not in uniform, we're not sworn, we have these skill sets and this training that you've given us, and in fact, we've actually helped solve crimes because people talk to us who may not talk to a police officer or a detective, and we take that information back. We are part of the team. And I said, you're absolutely right. And he goes, well, we just wanted to let you know. Not a problem. So this group, this briefing, they brief at 1 o'clock on Mondays and Tuesdays. So I went back to that briefing on Tuesday. And I said, I have failed you, but you have failed me because nobody in here checked me yesterday, but they did. See, humility and honor and hard work go a long way. So I went and talked to that briefing again about my leadership failure the day before. Then, every briefing that I did from then on, I actually started with the leadership failure because I didn't just apologize to the people who were in the room that day, I apologized to the entire organization. Because I can't sit in that chair every day and expect things from you that I'm not actually modeling myself. I got so much equity from employees with 15, 20 years. I had a 25-year employee come in after that and say, you are the first person in leadership I've ever had in my 25 years here actually admit that he did something wrong. 25 years, he's never heard his boss say, I messed up. So that's who I am, that's how I operate, and I think that hopefully I answered your question.
No, you did. I mean, it actually leads me to, directly to another one, which is, we have a lot of students, we have developing leaders, current leaders, we have people from all different walks here with us tonight, but this one may be a question is put for young aspirational leaders in our community in the room tonight. What are 2 or 3 areas of advice you would give developing leaders in order to become and serve as effective and ethical leaders in their community? Is there advice you would provide from your own career?
Yes. Fail forward. Work hard, don't be afraid. But I have what I refer to as Chief Martin's 4 rules for success. Rule number 1, put the needs of others ahead of any petty wants or desires of your own. You have got to have a servant's heart to be a leader, because leadership is not about you. The second leadership becomes about you, you need to step down. The accolades, the rewards, all of those things, they're not important for you. They're important for the campus. They're important for your community. They're important for the organization in which you're leading. In fact, I would like everybody in here who is in a leadership role where they are in their life right now to please raise your hand. It's going to take like half a second. Please raise your hand if you're in a leadership role. Every hand in here should be up. Because there is somebody who you have influence over who is watching how you behave and how you interact with others. And it is incumbent upon you to use that influence to lead at all times. I once had a lieutenant tell me that, and I was a young officer that was kind of in his side. You know, I wasn't always this refined, okay? Okay? Lots of walls, lots of hammers, you know, my parents can tell you that. But he told me when I was a detective that I would probably be the chief of police. And I told him, you have lost your mind, okay? I buck authority. I ask a lot of questions. I get under people's skin. He goes, no, but that's okay. He goes, but just remember this. And he called it his ladder principle, his leadership ladder principle. I said, what does that mean? He goes, remember, the higher you go up the ladder, the more people can see up your dress. So you better be wearing clean underwear. Because you can't be telling people you need to do X, Y, and Z when you are not performing that way. I thought, wow, okay, that's a visual and everything else that I'm going to work with. But putting the needs of others ahead of any petty wants or desires of your own. Number 2, always do more than what's expected of you. If you do more than what's expected of you, people will seek you out for opportunities. You will not have to go look for opportunities. Ask yourself, what do people think? What's the first thing that comes to mind when somebody hears your name? What's the first thing that comes to their mind? And if it's not appealing, and if it's not positive, you need to start working on that yesterday. Go purchase a mirror. And every day look in that mirror and ask, am I who I say I am? We all falter. We all trip. We have mishaps. But are you who you say you are? So doing more than what's expected of you requires you to do that. Number 3, this is one of the hardest things to do. I don't care if you're 5 or 5 as old as I am. Surround yourself with good people. In this life, we are given 2 families. The one you're born with, you can't control that. And the one you choose. And the people you choose to surround yourself with will directly influence your ability to make us a better community, make you a better leader on campus, lead you into whatever the next thing that you want to do with your life. Find a mentor. Surrounding yourself with good people means finding you a mentor. I have a new mentor every year. Sometimes they know they're my mentor, sometimes they don't. And I'll explain that here in a second. But I'll give you an example. 2018, I'm sitting in my office and I'm trying to figure out who's going to be my mentor. So I call Vicki and I said, Vicki, I need you to call this person and tell them I need to meet with them. It's not an emergency, nobody's dead, but I need to meet with them and I want them to come to my office. And she says, you want me to tell him what it's about? I said, no. She said, okay. So she makes a call. She says, he can be here Tuesday at 9, but he's really nervous. I said, okay. She said, he's called like 3 times. He wants to know what this is about. I said, no, I want him to come to the office. So he shows up at the office, comes in, never met this guy before in my life. Chief Martin, how are you? Good, how are you? Nice to meet you. He's about 15 years younger than me. Because when you're looking for mentors, you're looking for people that have those knowledge, skills, and abilities that you want to develop. So I have him sit down, and he's got a notebook. He goes, what do you want to talk about? I said, I would like you to mentor me for the next 45 minutes. We're going to have a mentoring session. He goes, what? I said, now, I go to your business maybe once every 2 or 3 months, and I have never had a bad experience there. In fact, the people who work there are always courteous. The place is always clean. You're always taking care of things. I want to know how you create that type of environment. And he kind of relaxed. He goes, really? I said, really? He goes, well, it's not about the food. It's about the experience. He goes, so people come in and they have this experience. And we tell our employees that, and this is how we train our employees. We actually keep extra employees on so people don't get fatigued. So we carry a higher per employee to customer ratio than our competitors. I said, okay. He goes, and every 3 or 4 months, we have metrics that we use to measure the performance. I said, okay, stop right there. I appreciate that. It's good to know. He goes, and we treat everybody with dignity and respect regardless of what they're doing. This is Troy Hess at Chick-fil-A. Because what I'd done was I'd gone in Chick-fil-A a couple times, and then I went into some other establishments near Chick-fil-A. The experience was not the same. This is not a Chick-fil-A commercial. Okay, I'm not affiliated with Chick-fil-A. I don't have any Chick-fil-A stock, but this is my experience. So now I have this gentleman who's a lot younger than me. He's telling me what his business model is. He's telling me how he does these things. And then he tells me about this training matrix. He says, and what we do is we look at people and we get the surveys. If you're in the lower 10% of the survey, you get extra training. And we want to bring up your skill sets. He goes, if you 3 cycles and you're in the lower 10%, then it's a different conversation. Now, I'm a math guy and I think a little bit different. My students will tell you, if you've taken one of my class, I always tell them, you don't want to live in here, it is weird. So I go, okay, explain that to me. He goes, so, sometimes people just aren't performing to the level of Chick-fil-A. I said, I get that. Well, let me ask you this. And anybody who's worked for me knows if I say, let me ask you this, that's bad for you. So let me ask you this. I said, I'm a track coach. He goes, yes. I've got a sprinter that runs 11.8. I got one that runs 11.9. I got one that runs 12 seconds. He goes, yes. And that 12 second, so I give him extra work. I do different things. I work with him. He goes, yeah. So next time we have a test, they run 11.7, 11.8, 11.9, but he's still in the lowest, but he got better. He goes, yes. So then the next time, so 3 times in a row. So now he's running 11.7. Everyone else is 11.6 and 11.5. I get rid of him? He goes, I'm going to have to talk to corporate about it. I said, because here's the deal. Somebody is going to be in the bottom 10%, right? It doesn't matter. Somebody is going to be there. And if everybody's level is here, it might be the same person 3 times in a row. Doesn't mean that they're not performing. In fact, they may be performing well above expectations. Surround yourself with good people. My conversation with Troy Hess, we both got something out of it. It was a win-win. And now we have a great relationship. Rule number 4, stay true to your faith, whatever your faith is. Needs of others ahead of any petty wants or desires of your own. Do more than what's expected of you. Surround yourself with good people. Stay true to your faith, whatever your faith is. If you can do those 4 things, you can accomplish anything on this planet.
Thank you, Chief. So in part of your answer, you said about failing forward, and you talked about falling down but getting up. And I'm wondering, from your time as Chief of Police, can you talk about a specific challenge you faced, something you had to grapple with, you had to face, and you had to try and solve within your organization, and how did you face that and respond to it as a leader?
I think it wasn't just our organization, it was our industry, and that is talking about our failures. When something bad happens, historically, most police departments and sheriff's departments, and we don't talk about that. I mean, it's not comfortable for any of us. Nobody wants to air their dirty laundry and say that we screwed up publicly. But from an ethical leadership perspective and from a policing perspective, I'd had to change that culture within the organization to say, look, number 1, we are in this together. The police and the community. The community is the police are the community. So I started talking about the social contract. And the social contract is this: the people give up certain rights so that we as law enforcement and government can act on your behalf. That means that you should have some input on what that looks like. And you should know what the scorecard looks like. So failing forward meant that I was putting things out that historically we did not put out. Hey, this incident happened, we screwed it up, and we're gonna do better, and we're gonna try to do it better the next time. Historically, we didn't do that. We had the information, we weren't hiding anything, but the culture was, if they don't come ask, don't tell. My culture is, don't make them have to come ask. You want to gain some credibility in the community? Go out and tell when you screwed up. When nobody knew but us. And we started to do that. And we put these things out there. They were minimal. But then we started telling our own story. Give the public some credit. They don't expect us to be perfect. What they do expect us to do is try to improve every day and be as transparent as the law allows. In fact, I got asked that question by a 25-year reporter who said, Chief Martin, why are you doing this? Because he was like, whoa, you called us in here to tell us about something that we didn't know, that we probably would have never found out about, and you're telling us about it. So offline, he goes, why are you doing this? I said, this is going to be the new normal. This is who I am. Because I guarantee you, for every one of these stories, there's going to be 10,000 feel-good stories about the work that the 700 men and women of the Bakersfield Police Department do day in and day out to keep you safe.
So, Chief, part of being a leader, of course, means working with followers, right? Those who are learning from you and who you're leading.
You can't be a good leader if you're not a good follower.
But there can there can also be a temptation to go on your own, and you're in the leadership position, and you feel like you know what's right. You need to make the decision, and sometimes there can be a temptation to do that. But you're somebody who's been really effective at building collaborations, coalitions within the community, between the police department and the community. Can you talk a bit about your strategies for how to form successful collaborations and coalitions around a program you're developing or work you're doing in an organization?
Yeah. I'm a very linear thinker. So we're going to do a little bit of talk about from a theoretical standpoint, from a practical standpoint, and then from Lyle Martin, Edith Martin's son standpoint, because Edith Martin says this: God gave you one mouth and two ears for a reason, so you can listen twice as much as you speak. If you want to build collaboration, if you want to build coalitions, you have to listen. Theoretically, the perspective is, how do we get there? How do you sit next to a person who has opinions that makes your blood boil? And work together. How do you do that? Well, for me, I always talk about doing the right thing for the right reasons. And you'll hear people say that. You got to do the right thing for the right reasons. Well, the second right is an acronym for me. RIIGHTT. Respect. Everyone is respected for their opinion, because I don't know what you've been through in your life. Your background, education, and experience may give you the reason to feel the way that you do. I don't know that. I only know what my background, education, experience is. So you're going to start with mutual respect. Intelligence. We're going to make intelligent decisions. We're going to make intelligent decisions based off critical thinking, not emotional decisions. Second I, we're going to do it with integrity. G, generosity. Be generous in your heart, in your mind, and in your deeds. H, from a policing standpoint, we do everything with honor. You do not want to tarnish that badge or the oath that you took. T's, teamwork and tenacity. So if you're doing the right things for the right reasons, using that acronym, you can then affect collaboration and communication. Now, for me, anytime I'm involved in something huge, a big project, something I have to do, I pride myself on being the dumbest person in the room. And I'm not kidding you. Pride myself, it's my project. I'm going to be the dumbest person in the room. In fact, if I find myself in a room over and over and I'm the smartest person in the room, I will find another room. You have to acknowledge other people's knowledge, skills, and abilities and thank them for it. Going back to Troy Hess, I know some of you are thinking, well, that's great, you're the chief of police. You can call anybody you want and they're going to show up. You know, how can I, as a student, go and do that? How can I build collaboration? How can I do these things? And, excuse me, real quick here. Excuse me, young lady, what's your name? Monica, can I borrow your notebook for 1 second? You'll be amazed what people do if you just ask them. Thank you, Monica. I'm already at no, right? I asked Monica for something. People want to help. It is natural for us to want to help. Yes, you can call a Troy Hess. Yes, you can call a Lyle Martin, a Dr. Burroughs. When you want to build collaboration, thank people for who they are. Acknowledge them for their, okay, I understand that's your opinion, I understand that's your background, and I'm going to try to work on that, because you have to seek first to understand, then be understood. Going back full circle, Mrs. Martin from Oklahoma, you listen twice as much as you speak. Hearing is physical. Okay, we're going to have a little lesson here. Listening is intellectual. You have to actively listen.
Thanks so much. Now, I could ask a number of more questions, but I'm going to not be selfish and be a leader, limit myself. I want to open it up to the audience for questions. And I'd like to start with at least the first two questions from CSUB students. And if you have a question, there's a microphone here and there's a microphone on that side. So I'm going to ask that you go over to the microphones and you use those to ask a question. You feel free to line up by them if you'd like to. Do we have any sensational sophomores in the room who could stand by the mics and help people out with that on each side? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here. So I was wondering if there are any core leadership principles that you think are always at the center of the work you do, regardless of maybe the kind of leadership culture you're in. I know some are more democratic and some function a little more top-down, more authoritarian, gets work done in some situations. Are there any principles you carry across different scenarios that you think should always be center to those?
Yes. I talked about one, trustworthiness. People have to believe what you're saying. Two is always finding a way. Every person in the organization has value. You need to find out what their skill sets are and help them help the organization. People will then bring their own weaknesses to you as the leader, to your attention, or they will work on them on their own because now they know organizationally you care about them. So if you're trustworthy and you care about the people who work with you, and I said this as the chief, nobody worked for me as the chief. I worked for them because it was my job to give them the resources, skills, abilities, and things that they needed to serve you. So it was my job to serve them. So you have to have a servant leadership heart versus having a selfish leadership heart. If you're worried about the next promotion or the next accolade, that means you're performing mediocre at best at the task you have right now.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And then my question was, I'm a manager at a restaurant, and I sort of related to what you said, that the higher you go, the less people you can have lunch with. So my question to you was, I got the promotion as manager even though I'm younger, and there's a bunch of people that are way older than me who were looking forward to that position, but they didn't get it. And there's a lot of like resentment. How do you move on to build relationships with them without losing your position? Because there's been times where I think it would just be better to let it go, and somebody who's older, because they feel they deserve it, but I feel like I have a shot.
Okay, I'm tracking. This is not easy, but you have to develop this relationship because you're the manager. The competition is over, okay? So you give people, there's a grieving period, and you give people time to grieve, but at some point you're going to have that face-to-face, heart-to-heart conversation about what your expectations are, what the organization's expectations are, and how their behavior, attitude, or whatever is affecting not you. It's not about you. How it's affecting the brand, how it's affecting the shift, however it's affecting, whatever it is. So you have to start, now in education, K through 12, they talk about restorative circles, those types of things. You maybe not be to that point yet, but people have to know where you stand because they're going to push as far as you're going to let them. You allow them to be respectful, they can be unhappy, all of those types of things. But at the end of the day, they are getting paid to do a job for the organization, and the organization has put you in that position of leadership. Regardless of where you are in the leadership stage in an organization, you have to be cognizant of just how much of a friendship you can have with people you supervise. You have to know that. And sometimes you learn that the hard way. But you will learn that. And yeah, you know, I kind of said it funny that the higher you go, the fewer people you can have lunch with. But when I speak, I'm speaking for the Bakersfield Police Department. Or now when I speak, I'm speaking for Cindy Zimmer and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. And you have to understand that. I'll give you a quick kind of funny story. I'm the assistant chief at the police department, and I go to what's called Cops West. And that's where all the new toys are. So these new cars are there, and I've got this brochure. I come back to the department, I get in the elevator, and I've got a brochure. And 2 patrol officers get in the car, or get in the elevator with me. Chief, how's it going? Great. I just came from Ontario, horrible drive. But man, have you seen these new police Caprices? They're some of the nicest cars I've ever seen. Yeah, they get off, I go to my office. 38 minutes later, Chief Williamson, anybody knows Chief Williamson, 6'5", almost 400 pounds, played line at, every time he came to my office, it just got dark in there. I didn't even have to look up. He'd come to the door, he goes, so we're getting new Caprices, huh, Chief? I go, what are you talking about? Oh, it's all over the department. We're getting new Caprices. It took me a minute. I go, I never, what? I go, oh my God. All I said is I like the new Caprice. But I'm the assistant chief. And people ran with that. So as you go up, you have to be very careful on what you say, what you do, everything. Because somebody's watching. But just stick to your guns, make sure you're within policy, within law, all of the things that you're supposed to do. And generally, those people end up kind of weeding themselves. They end up taking care of themselves. As long as you are doing things with integrity, ethics, working hard, setting that example.
Thank you very much.
So hi, my name is Marlene Estrada.
Hi, Marlene.
And I have three kind of questions. One
little
is,
questions? Do you hear me talking? There are no little questions.
one is, how do you deal with ego? And one is kind of an opinion. It's, do you feel that trust correlates with happiness? And the third one is, how do you get the younger generation like us more involved in the community and like problems going on like in the community or worldwide or or just in the community just to start?
Okay. Ego. This is a tough one. People struggle with this. Okay. There's no research behind this, okay? I don't think you're going to find any books on this. This is a Chief Martinism, okay? Ego is the intersection where arrogance meets ignorance. That means that I don't know enough about what's happening, and I'm too full of myself to learn. And that's when ego takes over. And you have to be we all have an ego, but when ego starts to push into bad decision making, hurting the organization, those types of things, you can generally say there's an intersection there where I'm too cool for school, but I'm too stupid to realize that I ain't that cool. Does that help? Mm-hmm. Okay, the second one. The second question was trust?
Yeah, like.
And happiness? No. No. And here's why. If you trust me, I'm going to have to give you bad news. And all the news that I give you is not always going to be warm and fuzzy. Mm-hmm. Now, as a leader, you have to create a culture where people feel comfortable bringing you bad news. Mm-hmm. That is an absolute. Mm-hmm. You have to create that culture where they're comfortable bringing you bad news. Third was, how do I get more young people involved? Look around this room. Okay? Everybody in this room, look to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you. Make a new connection before you leave here today.
I did. I actually talked to the person next to me.
Yeah. Nice.
Yes, that's how you do it. Make a connection before you leave here tonight. You would be surprised, especially in Bakersfield, us old-time Bakersfield, Kern County people, that we call it 2 degrees of separation. But make a connection tonight. You'd be amazed how little steps lead into big projects and big things that change the world.
Thank you.
Other questions?
That's it? Man.
Please, just in case people have any hearing issues.
Miles Howard, U.S. Marine Corps, Director of Veterans Affairs at ASI.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, sir. In a team setting, what can you do to work successful as a team but still stand out as a leader?
Work successful in the team and still stand out as a leader. Miles, you ever hear John Wooden? I love John Wooden. He's one of my favorites, one of the best coaches of all time. Coached UCLA for years, all the national championships. If you haven't got this book, go get it. It's full of little nuggets. And I just happen to have one of my favorite pages here marked. Your own standard of success. This is not me, this is what John Wooden says. Don't measure yourself by what you've accomplished, but rather by what you should have accomplished with your abilities. Always striving to get better. In the team setting, you are the driver, you're the catalyst for where the team is going as the leader. Are you the one that's only doing 8 push-ups when we should be doing 10? Or are you the one doing 11 when the goal was 10? Because this goes back to Chief Martin's rule number 2. Always do more than what's expected of you. You'll be surprised. Self-fulfilling prophecies. People will rise to the level that you ask them to. And they will do it willingly. If they know that you have their best interest in mind, not your success.
Other questions?
Hello, sir. My name is Katie Gorey, and I'm a communication major here at CCB. You mentioned earlier sometimes your mentors know who they are and sometimes they don't. For those of us that are want to surround ourselves with mentors and we're not too sure how to go about it, how do we immerse ourselves around them without them?
Well, looking like a stalker?
Right.
All right. Get involved. Find something that you're passionate about. And then find somebody who's doing it well and ethically. They will be drawn to you, actually. So I'm going to reveal a little secret. I have my mentor for 2020 is sitting in the front row. Dr. Zalesny and I we've collaborated on a couple of things, but I wanted her to be a mentor, but it wasn't for that. What I needed was somebody, I had a vision, but I wasn't quite sure that I was the perfect person to get the message to the people who I was trying to lead. So I scanned my sphere of influence, and Dr. Zalesny fit the bill. So I called and asked her for a favor. And she has been doing leadership, lunch and learns, if you will, with female police officers. Because our profession, historically, is male-dominated. And there are some things experiences that I don't have. Now here's somebody who's been through a lot of things, and she's written articles and things on things that I've studied, where she talks about, I'm going to go into this, I'm sorry, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, but I think it's important. Talk about women in law enforcement, but women in general as to how they approach a promotion or a job or something based on the job flyer. As a man, I'll look at a job flyer and it'll say, these things are required or don't even apply, right? But if it says either or, I will rationalize in my mind as a man that I fit that. Women they don't do that as much as men do. I don't fit that, so why bother applying? But you have skills and abilities that do actually translate into what we're looking for in that position. I've understood that through my studies, but I don't think I was the right person to deliver that message. So thank you. You met with those 10 young ladies, young women, young leaders, future leaders in your Bakersfield Police Department, and they are excited. But you have to find something you're passionate about. Find that ethical leader, the people that you want to aspire, or somebody who has a strength that's one of your weaknesses. And you have to, I don't care what your lot in life is, you have to be willing to be vulnerable and get hurt. Yeah, somebody's going to tell you no. But when a door closes, look for a window.
Good evening. My name is Uchechi. I have a question. As students, we all have expectations for ourselves, and we set goals. What is your advice for students who do not meet their expectations or experience failure for the first time?
Goal setting, failures, and how do you deal with your first time in having a failure?
Or just in general?
In general. Okay. First of all, for me, framing is everything. What does failure mean? And when does failure actually occur? Is it failure because you got an F in Professor Martin's class? Well, on the paperwork it says yes. Did you learn anything over that semester? I learned lots of things. I'm a much better student. I'm much better in, I teach advanced topics in policing. I'm much better in understanding the Fourth Amendment and the 14th Amendment and what my rights are and due process. So did you fail? No. You're going to get better. That's what I'm talking about, failing forward. And how do we get up? Now, I will tell you, I've got some friends that this always upsets them, but I don't care. I use it all the time. The American Youth Soccer Organization, AYSO. How many have heard of AYSO? AYSO ruined the country. Okay? Everybody does not get a trophy. Everybody does not win. We do keep score. But there are some people who have taken that model where they're talking about trying to build up kids' character and those types of things. And I get that. I know what their model is. It makes sense. But at some point, you have to explain to the kids that we're just giving you a foundation. Now it's incumbent upon you to build on it and learn from your failures. Don't get discouraged by your failures. I started and stopped college 9 times. 9 times. Because life happens. Things happen. What did you learn from it and where are you going to go forward? And who is your support system? Again, that goes back to rule number 3. Are you surrounding yourselves with people who immediately, again, human nature, go to the negative? The yeah butters. Hey, so-and-so got an award for such a, yeah, but you guys know those people. We all know somebody, regardless of where you're going, what you're doing, that they suck the oxygen out of the room the second they enter. Right? You got to get away from those people. They may come back into your life because we all mature at different rates. But if you're around a yeah butter, you got to think about that for a little bit. It's okay to fail. Because if you're not failing, you're not learning, you're not growing. I learned far more from my failures than any of my successes. Because a lot of successes were just damn luck. But we took it as if, man, I was really cool. I took care of that. No, it just happened to work out that time. Failure, you will go back and self-reflect and look at, okay, this worked, this worked, this worked. Ooh, should have went right there when when I went left. So I'm not gonna make you feel any better. Failure's good, but it's all in the way you look at it.
We have time for one more question if there's one.
No more questions? I have a question then. Oh, all right.
How you doing? Carlos Lerma. My question to you is, I work in a place where it's very policy-driven, and if, say, a higher up that's above your pay grade tells you to do something that violates policy, how would you address that? Do you do as you're told, or do how they tell you to do, and lose credibility with your subordinates?
Interesting. Because we work in a paramilitary organization. And for me, this is something that we addressed at the police department when as chief. Because our policy manual is this thing. In fact, I tell people, if I want to get you, I can get, everybody violates some policy every day, regardless of it, because it's just the policy manual is so thick. We tell employees is this: we have guiding values and guiding principles. And at BPD, it came out as compassion, accountability, and professionalism. If you find yourself at the corner, walk and don't walk at 2 o'clock in the morning, because policy is not what I say it is as a chief, or as Chief Terry says it. Policy is what's happening on that car stop at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's your policy. If they find themselves in conflict where the policy is incongruent with one of our values, make the value decision. Because I can go back and change the policy. What I can't do is go back and change the experience, the influence, and the impact that it had on one of our community members when you made that decision. Now, internally, what you do is respectfully, intelligently, not emotionally, with integrity, generosity, honor, teamwork, and tenacity, explain your position to your superior in that context without attacking their status, their place, but in an effort to educate. And if they still don't go with it, then you can make the policy decision. You do what you have to do. And then the next morning, you start looking for another place to work. Because if that's the culture, is that we don't care about the people, we don't care about how things are done. Because what we do is important. How we do it is extremely important. So I don't, without having more information, knowing who you are, because we all have people who you know the people you can approach at work, and you know the people who you absolutely can't. We're dealing with human beings. But you have to be able to work in an environment where you can function, because it is not mentally, physically, or emotionally healthy for you if you are in constant conflict every time you come to work. And that leads me to one last story. The police department, we have a second story outside of our communications center. 2 to 3 days a month, I would stand out there and watch the cars come and go, and the people come and go. And before they figured it out, people thought that I was standing up there and wanted to see who's coming late and who's leaving early. In fact, I had a group of supervisors come and go, "Hey boss, troops are nervous that you're up there looking to see." I said, "You know what? A friend of mine once said that if somebody at my level is standing around watching who's leaving early and coming late, excuse my French, but we have kicked crime's ass." If that's what I'm worried about. Okay? That's not what I'm worried about. What I'm looking at is the body language of the people who are coming and going. And if I see somebody who looks like they're carrying a 50-pound weight on their back, within the next 8 hours, they're either going to get a visit from me or for at least their supervisor to check their welfare. That's the type of culture you want to develop. Those are the types of relationships you need to develop. Then you can have those tough conversations that you need to have. And I think the other young lady, I think that goes to what your question was as well. How do you have that, and how do you get there put your ego aside, put the well-being of people ahead, and the rest of it seems to work itself out.
Thank you.
So I want to thank all of you for your wonderful questions, and I want to thank Chiefs again so much for being with us tonight and for sharing your
Thank
insight
you.
and experience. Thank you so much.
I'm humbled.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next time. Thanks.